It's the last day of our dig in Devon, where the people of Modbury have already uncovered over 2,000 years of history in their back gardens. But we're also trying to find the Champernowne's grand mansion and a Benedictine priory, which we now think had an elaborate cloister.
Of a window. We could potentially have recovered something really magical here.
But with just one day left, we're relying on our volunteers' enthusiasm and dedication to get us over the line.
And I want to say a huge thank you to the volunteers at Modbury. So 5 hours left, can we do it? Yeah!
It's Sunday morning and a special day at St George's in Modbury, because it's the last day before it's closed to complete the renovations.
My name's Jim Stetson.
Hi Jim, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
And Jim's keen to attend, because the Stetson kindred have been contributing to the maintenance of the church for many years. We've got 16 test pits open so far, and Corenza wants to find out whether Simon's Geophys has picked up the walls of an unexpected substantial medieval house in the school grounds.
Every test pit is like a piece in a jigsaw puzzle, and you think when you're doing a jigsaw puzzle, you're kind of putting the pieces into place, and each one tells you what's going on in that area. And the more pieces of a jigsaw puzzle you've got into place, the more you can see what the picture is. At the moment, the whole area of Modbury is blank, apart from our 17 test pits, and there are little bits of the jigsaw puzzle, and this is one of them. As soon as you've got
An important piece of the jigsaw puzzle might be in Matt's second test pit, because it could just be part of the Champernowne's manor that we've been hunting for.
See the straight lines along there? That's what the natural geology looks like, but here it's going off round. There it's kind of coming off at an angle, and there's a big kind of metal thing there. And that way it's all going that way. So it looks like natural geology, but it's not. So I really can't work it out. We know that we're inside a building. It could be something to do with the floor.
If this is the floor of the Champernowne Manor, it's fantastic news, because we've been struggling to find any structural remains of medieval buildings. Unfortunately, Andy's dendro survey has drawn a blank, and he's blaming the climate.
Here we've got happy trees.
Well, of course, we're in Devon.
Unfortunately, yeah, they're getting lots of sun, they've got all the nutrients they want, so they're putting on wide rings. So you get a big timber, big enough for construction, in only 30, 40 years.
Right.
Yeah. Whereas in Surrey, a timber only that size will have twice as many rings because it's very slow growing.
Yeah.
So this is our problem. Happy trees, I like miserable trees.
Happy
suffering.
trees make miserable dendrochronologists.
They do.
But all isn't quite lost, because Helen's got her hands on a building survey of Church House,
And the report, if you, keep your finger.
where the Stetsons lived in the 17th century, in which one of the beams has been dated.
It's Trust T3, and Robert Waterhouse in this marvellous report says that it's very similar to dendrochronologically dated examples, which are all kind of early 14th century, but this one is slightly stylistically later. So he's putting it at kind of circa 1400. And essentially, there's only two of these roof types in South Devon, and they can be really thoroughly linked to other ones elsewhere that have these 14th century
But the stylistic evidence is very useful because the dendrodates, we're not getting them.
No.
So you are having to use dendrodates around the area and bring them into Modbury to actually work out the dating. So this is incredibly useful.
Armed with this new information, we're moving our investigations to the old Rose and Crown pub, which we believe was here in the medieval period.
You need to eat some more Weetabix for your breakfast and a few more sausage sandwiches, you think, to get some weight behind you.
And Andy's keen to get up into the roofs to examine the timbers.
It should be.
Here's a ladder I prepared a bit earlier.
Thank you. Shall I head on up then? Modbury has them. Let's see what we got. Can you see from there, Nigel?
Just about.
This is original, the collar. and we've got some nice wooden nails there, no metalwork used.
Yes.
Yeah, some nice carpenter's marks. This is a later timber though, so we're actually looking at oak here, so normally 1700 for oak. And we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 going that way. There's one behind me here, possibly another one, so it's either a 4 or a 5 bay.
Yeah.
We've got an N chimney there. We've got an M chimney behind me. So you're a chimney phase building,
Yes.
not an open hall.
Yes.
And open halls go out of fashion around 1540. Date-wise, I'd put it probably around between 1600 and 1650 from these features.
This is around the time of the Civil War, when the Champenown Manor just over the road was at least partially destroyed, but which Matt thinks he can now see.
Are you happy that that's actually
Absolutely,
a surface?
that's a cobble floor, definitely a surface, and it's obviously it's been, you caught a moment of trauma in the life of a building here.
Right.
They've moved in. They're selling all the masonry and they're selling everything they can get from it. So they've pulled it down. They've taken all the slates off, and you've got what look like scantle slates from a nice early slated roof here.
Yeah.
And then when they just rip them all off, throw them onto the floor, it buries the floor, and then they take the whole building down.
There is a couple of metal items there and there. I suspect they're bits of the demolition as well, are they, that have rusted to the floor?
Yes, there'll probably be medieval and Tudor period buildings often have big stone window frames with metal stanchions let into them, both for security and for fixing window things too.
So, I mean, I know it's a very difficult question, but you can't date a floor like this, really, can you?
No, you cannot, no.
It's very crude, isn't it?
No. Well, it's a beautiful thing. Very often they form patterns. I think you might have the beginnings of a pattern here.
Yes.
The Royalists were pushed back into Champenown Manor as the parliamentarians advanced through Modbury, and the whole area became a battleground. And Sam and Hilda are getting a taste of the weapons that might have been in use.
So Sam and I are with the reenactors who are going to be showing us some period weapons from the English Civil War.
Trouble is, we look a bit too much like archaeologists at the moment, I think. We don't really fit in over here.
But I've got a plan for that. You ready to jump on 3?
Okay.
1, 2, 3.
That is more like it.
Let's go, shall we?
Okay. Is there any chance you can run me through this,
Yes,
Ian?
you can have a go at that. I can be a drill sergeant for today.
That would be fantastic if you don't
So
mind.
in that case, the first thing, if we can put the musket down, butt end down on the floor.
Okay.
And I'll come around to that side away from where you're doing the powder. And this muzzle loader, so everything goes down the front of the barrel. And this, we start off with a powder horn, and this has a little measure on the front, which is 2 drams, and you have to guess how much powder you're putting down. If you got it wrong, if you're too little, or the ball might not come out the barrel at all, and you lost your gun. If you're too much, you could blow the gun up. And from then, we'd need to put a little bit of wad in there. There would be a bit of grass, bit of cloth, anything we want. We're using a little bit of paper. And then if you take this thing out, that's our scouring stick, turn it over, shorten it a bit, push it in, and push it right down at the end and knock the powder in.
Right.
Pull the thing out again, turn it over, put it back under the barrel there, and we bring the gun up into a firing position, just like a modern shotgun.
Okay.
Take an aim, pull the cock back, it should click, and then it's just a matter of pull the trigger.
Imagine thousands of soldiers fighting through the streets of Modbury. The Royalists, vastly outnumbered, eventually tried to make their escape down Runaway Lane, where Stuart has a new theory.
I've put a ranging rod at the side there, and I've put my map just on a surface up there, because what we have here actually are 2 roadways, one cut into the other. At the level up here on the ranging pole, everything from here downwards is actually vertical sided, cut straight down, and in places actually cut through the rock itself. Tremendous undertaking, and you can see that going all the way down over the brow there, and above it there's another level heading up to where the hedge line is up there. So what I'm seeing here is a phenomenon I've seen in many places, where you've actually got a roadway, a hollow way, and that's up there, but later in date it's actually cut down deeper to make it more stable, more substantial in effect for carted traffic, continually using it. And that often occurs in the 18th century, and I think that's what's occurred here. So the runaway lane that the royalist troops retreated along, in fact, they would be walking at this height, almost on my height itself. Their feet would be on my head, as it were, and this is the level that they were retreating down the road, not where my feet are at the moment.
So it seems the fleeing royalists were even more exposed than we thought. And the lower path was the main routeway into the thriving town that Modbury became in the 18th century. Back in the Exeter Inn, we've revealed more of the step. It's not really making sense as a building, but we have found a small piece of pottery.
It's got that black central core with the orange.
Yeah, that's definitely medieval.
Yeah.
So I'll just give you that toll. So that's definitely, it's quite a nice bit of medieval as it goes, because it's got a little bit of she's got a line round here. It's got a little bit of impressed decoration there, which sometimes you can even see people. In fact, I think that's an imprint of fingernail in there, where someone sort of decorated it kind of just by pushing their finger in like that, as it were. It's quite nice. I think it's probably, again, it's that 1200 to about 1400.
So more medieval evidence. And just a few feet away in Back Lane, they've found the base of a large glass bottle.
Oh, there you go. Well, we got the bottom.
Got the base.
We'll find the other bit now.
So if it, you can see the shape of it coming
Yeah,
up
I can
like
see
that.
what it does now.
And then you have a neck there. So it's not a very tall bottle.
No.
And it's quite a sort of an onion shape.
Yeah.
An onion bottle like this might have held brandy and been passed around by Victor Stetson and the Royalists as they prepared for battle.
So I'm really looking forward to firing this.
So what we'll need is this thing. This is called the spoon, and this will be for loading the gunpowder. There would have been a barrel of gunpowder at the back, but we're not allowed to do that, so we've pre-measured some, and that will go in there. And this is just a quarter of a charge of what the gun will take. And we put that down the barrel, keeping it level, right to the end, then elevate and rotate and bring it out, and all the powder should be in there. We'll then need some wad, some nice green leaf. So shove a bit of that down there, and then take the rammer, which is this thing, and just tap it all home.
We know that the Royalists had artillery at the battle, 5 pieces that were captured by the parliamentarians. Is this a kind of small artillery piece that they would have had?
Yes, we do. We do know that at least some of those pieces were breech loaders, and the only breech loaders they had in that time were swivel guns from the ships.
What's next?
Well, next thing we'll need is the pricker, which is that thing, and that makes sure there's some powder down inside. You should be able to feel it down there, and now just pour powder in until the hole is filled.
Enough to fill it?
Yep.
Right, you need to take hold of the tiller like that, brace it, stand sideways into it, and then she'll be fired.
Because it's going to be a recoil and quite a loud bang.
Well, it might be.
Ow!
Oh my goodness.
Bang.
That's a loud bang.
Records suggest that the cannon and a large quantity of arms were captured by the parliamentarians as they took control of Champagnat Manor.
So we've cleaned up and photographed the floor, but I couldn't resist just taking up a few of the cobbles to see what's underneath. And what we've got there is a bit of mortar, a bit more building material, and that looks like some kind of mortar base that all these cobbles have been packed down onto. So I've just taken out 3 or 4, but if you look at them, you can see there this very angular broken stone, but that's the surface. They were laid upright like that, and look how worn and smooth that. So Nikki cleaned this one, we've had this one cleaned as well there, and people must have been walking across these, you know, for a very, very long time to get them that worn. It's really beautiful.
So if these cobbles could talk, they tell stories about the Champagnat family as their fortunes rose and fell from the 14th century to the Civil War.
So I've come into the garden to meet this amazing Tudor lady who's curtsying to me. Who are you?
So I'm here today dressed as Catherine Champagnat, and she's got a very close connection with the house that used to stand on this very spot here in Modbury, and it's absolutely wonderful to be dressed as her and standing here.
At what point are you born?
Around 1519, and she spends her childhood here. Her father, he serves at King Henry's court, so they're a high-profile family in those times. But like many women of her time, she's married very young, possibly betrothed around 12 years old, married sometime soon after. She's actually going to marry twice. Her second husband is a man called Walter Raleigh, or as some people say, Walter Raleigh. And she has some more children with him. The youngest boy is Sir Walter Raleigh. So you're talking to Walter Raleigh's mum.
Oh my goodness. So you are born about 10 years after the start of Henry VIII's reign, and you're living throughout the 16th century. And when you think about the test pit that we've got here,
it's just thrilling, isn't it?
It is.
Those stones might well have been here when this woman was walking in this very place.
Yes.
Isn't that absolutely
I'm
magical?
sitting on one of these carved stones, and which could have been a fireplace. So this could be a fireplace at which Catherine Champernowne warmed her hands.
And warm her hands. I'm absolutely sure it must be.
Lady Champernowne. She might have walked from her manor house through the priory to the church, where Stuart's beginning to reveal a much earlier story.
I'm presently looking for the circuit of this possible Iron Age hill fort, which ran, I suspect, in front of where the church is now, and there's an earthwork off to my left. I've just seen Lady Champernowne, Catherine Champernowne, is that correct?
It is indeed.
Very pleased to meet you, thank you.
Master.
It's not often that you meet a lady in the course of doing landscape archaeology. Thank you very much. Where the graves are, here on my left-hand side, the slope is actually, it's getting steeper and steeper. And by the time we get to the edge of the churchyard, we're actually quite a way below the level on the top where eventually the priory was established. And I'm fairly confident that that slope is a residue of that prehistoric earthwork, which makes it really interesting because the church itself is laid along its alignment, and that may account for why it's not a truly east-west church, it's more north-west-south-east, that when it was placed here there was something in this landscape which helped dictate its layout.
All this ties in neatly with Derek's survey of the wider landscape, which shows Modbury has striking similarities with other nearby Iron Age hill forts.
Very similar in character, as you can see. And if I bring up one more, which just happens to be our village of Modbury, you can see that the characteristics, the style, the shape, the structure of our enclosure around the precinct is almost identical to these two prehistoric monuments. And I'm willing to bet that this started life as a hill fort.
I like what you're saying. I really do. This is wonderful because I think Modbury offers such a rich time depth of landscape. What we've got is the hilltop enclosure, we've got the priory up here by the medieval period, we've got another major influence, which is a stream. But interestingly, it's a very substantial settlement. At Doomsday, by Doomsday, there are 54 households, I think, recorded. And
how does that relate to the rest of the country? Is that?
It's in the top 20% of settlements so it's big by that period. You've got this one curving back lane. See how different it is to everything else. I think that's a residue of that kind of doomsday pattern of settlement just being fossilised in that lane. As the Norman conquest evolves, as it were, and the town gets richer and the economy increases, and Modbury is really unusual. So it's actually got 4 manor houses, which is that's bound to affect how the settlement evolves. And you can see different patterns of burgage plots. These are long and thin and curvy, these are big and so on. There are different patterns evolving to respect the different manors.
In the school test pits, where we found the medieval roof tile, we thought we might have found one of these manor houses, but there's no sign of it.
Now going down 6.
You said that in a sort of tone of voice which says, and we haven't found it.
I didn't say that.
No, I know, but that's what it is.
I didn't say that. I was being very upbeat.
Yeah,
we haven't found anything yet.
Brilliant. Right.
And we've got about 40 minutes to go.
You've definitely got a career in this sort of thing, Ed.
Oh gosh.
So, keeping then, what have you had out of it and where finds?
Just some flint, I think.
That again, I think that's almost certainly, it's not the other half of this, is it? Oh yes it is, isn't it? Yeah. Oh well, there you are, you see, so that's all kind of working.
All one piece.
Yeah, so that, in fact, and you can see now you've got all of it together. We're talking about one facet, second facet. There's also another facet here, that's also man-made or human-made.
Yet more evidence of a prehistoric past in Modbury. The community has been working tirelessly despite the baking conditions.
Time team descended on Modbury. How has it been? Hopefully it's been a positive experience.
Yeah, it's been a very positive thing. It's been great to hear of the school doing work in their field. I've got small children at the primary school, so they came home to tell me about that. It's been lovely to walk around and see the scouts out and about, digging various pits. But also there has been a buzz in the town for the weekend, which has been great for us as a small town to feel at the centre of something.
We're feeling involved and part of a big story. You know, it's not just the history we learnt at school. This is real people and real lives.
I've lived in Modbury a long time and it's part of the community, so I wanted to get involved in it.
There's only a few hours left of the dig, so Carenza's beginning a lightning tour to see what's coming up, starting in the garden of the old Rose and Crown.
That's German stoneware. This particular sort of stoneware with that blue stuff on it. So that's imported from quite a long way away. Obviously it's coming in from Germany. There's another bit of it there with the blue on it. That's going to be sort of just after the Civil War, but it's quite wealthy stuff. And we haven't had very much of this at all from any of the other test pits in Modbury. So it's quite special that you've got any of that at all. So we're just starting to get a little bit more of a sense of Modbury with a bit more international trade coming in. That's a nice bit of medieval pottery. So that's going to be probably between about 1100 and 1300, 1400. So probably just before the Black Death. Might even be a tiny bit earlier than that. Oh, now that is fantastic. That is bang on Civil War. Okay,
amazing.
It's Staffordshire slipware. So it's very tightly dated. It's about 1650 to 1750 sort of time. But you've also reached what the thing we're really interested in here for Modbury is the Civil War. That Civil War battle, 1643.
This is really
Exactly. This is coming in straight after that.
We're seeing pottery from the dark days of the Black Death and the Civil Wars to the wealth and the prosperity of the 1700s.
These three bits, as I say, they're all looking a bit 1650, 1750, that sort of thing. This is coming from further away, Staffordshire probably. Okay. If you were really posh up here at that time, you'd have sort of imported Delft ware, which is kind of, it's a light, blue, white. Blue.
Was it Delft ware that Carenza wanted?
Because it's blue, I'm going to go and have a word.
Yes, catch her with him.
Right, well that is amazing because that looks possibly like Delftware. Actually, yeah, it does look quite like, because it looks like it's hand painted. You obviously get later kind of, you know, the kind of willow pattern plate that you get that's really common, you can buy in the shops still today. But that has a white fabric, whereas this is much more creamy coloured fabric. So this is an earthenware, and that looks like that's brush painted rather than transfer printed. That's amazing. That is great to have that. And it actually again picks up that sense of actually maybe this is a little bit special here. So again, really top program, and it is literally, it's 20 to 2 now, and we've got to finish at 3 o'clock, so you've got kind of an hour and a half. You can obviously carry on after that,
right.
And you've got reinforcements. Look at that.
The wealth injection of the 18th century came from the manufacture and sale of fine woolen serge cloth.
And so we actually know of a particularly successful man called Richard Perring, and he was a serge manufacturer and a banker. And during that particular period of time of the sort of early 1800s, when he was around, Modbury was the place for serge manufacturing. Yeah. So a lot of the local people would have been involved in that industry. The whole Perring family were doing very well for themselves with serge manufacture, but unfortunately in 1825 crisis hits, and there is something called the Panic of 1825. It affects people up and down the country actually, and it also hits Modbury. A lot of the banks fail, and it means that all manner of people in all levels of society around the country many of them experience financial struggles, and the Perrings are no different. Richard Perring is declared bankrupt, and in 1826 there is a bankruptcy commission for him at the Exeter Inn.
The Perrings lived in Church Street, and their rising fortunes in the 18th century are reflected in the Georgian decor.
This is really exquisite Georgian work, late Georgian work, and you can see the sort of, compared to the details we've been looking at, this is a high-end house, and you compare it to the high-end house we saw at the Exeter Inn. This is very, very different, much more delicate. This is probably all on close-grained pine, and this one will be modelled in gesso, which is like a sort of very fine plaster, and just everything is sort of like exquisite and niminy piminy, and it's gorgeous. People love it.
After the Panic of 1825, smaller manufacturers survived by making plush and hats. And Naomi's post-excavation work on the material from Brick House revealed it wasn't leather, but part of a species of nut, probably used in the dyeing process. Brick House is said to have been a hat factory in the 18th and 19th centuries, at the time when the Stetson hat empire was in its infancy on the other side of the world. And the traditional techniques, well, they haven't really changed.
So this is a new hat. The number of X's here on the hat indicate how much purity there is for the fur felt. So this is a 6XXX, which is a pretty high fur felt. So beaver fur is the traditional method of making a hat. And there's a whole felting process, which involves a lot of water and a lot of heat. And it's a multiple step process it's not quite like building a sword, but it's almost like plating on the hat itself.
As we come to the end of our time in Modbury, there's still the burning question of where the Lost Priory stood.
Richard, we have been talking and talking about where on earth the Priory can be. And one of the things that everybody keeps saying is, well, there's the Prior's door. Doesn't that help? Now, does it help?
I don't think it does,
okay,
because I don't think that door could possibly have been made in the medieval period. It clearly looks 16th or 17th century, very late 16th or very early 17th.
The next thing I want to ask you about is the extension of the churchyard, because it used to be very narrow along the north side, and then between the 1840s and the 1910s it was extended, and they think they found the priory. So we've got this plan that's come from the local historians in Modbury, which actually marks a square saying priory, and this plan is located by the graves, and grave E here is the grave of Sarah Watts, who was buried in 1897. Now that one I've hung my bag on. You can see it over there. So this, which I mean maybe could possibly be the cloister, is the other side of that grave, between that and the hedge.
Yes, that's about where Sarah Watts is buried. So we can now construct our church here. We can have our freighter. We can have our dormitory, or perhaps our dormitory here. And there is Modbury Priory, I think. And we have lots of examples in Devon. Well, there's two, Frithelstock and St Mary's Totnes, where the Priory Church is right next to the parish church.
So, what are we going to do about this door, which works perfectly as a prior's door, except that it is 300-400 years too late? How are we going to solve that?
It becomes the entrance to somebody's very glamorous private pew. We know that the Champernownes had an enormous mansion over there, we know that this transept is full of their tombs. So the Champagnans simply walk through what used to be the priory, straight in via a slip or passage to their brand new, exciting, Renaissance style private pew.
And perhaps Hugh Stetson was responsible for carving the Champagnans' pews. After the death of the last prior in the 15th century, the priory fell to ruin. The valuable dressed stones were removed until only the church remained. We've dipped into thousands of years of Modbury's rich history, and Dominic has decided to leave something for future archaeologists.
Well, we thought, well, before we fill the hole in, we would leave a little message to the future. And so we've just said why we dug the hole, so for the time team. We get told it's owned by Mum and all the people that helped to dig it.
Amazing. That's really sweet thought, isn't it? And what else have you got in the time capsule?
And we've donated a penny to the future. We can't afford much more than that. So that's going to be it. But hopefully it's a 2016 1p piece.
Fantastic. Well, I'll tell you what we should do as well. Time team mug.
Oh,
Why don't we
brilliant.
put that in as well?
What an excellent thing. That would be wonderful to go with our message, the activity. There you go, chaps. See you in another 500 years.
Our time here has come to an end, so we're placing all of the most interesting finds into our map of Modbury to help tease out the stories that have emerged from our test pits.
So it's been a fantastic 3 days. We've managed to find an awful lot of stuff, dig an awful lot of test pits. 13 and 14, modern, we didn't find an awful lot there. But actually moving round to test pit 7, that was the Rose and Crown originally, the inn. And we found some really nice assemblages there, really connected with the pub. So we got lots of clay pipes coming out of there. We found some lovely 18th century Westerwald tankards. Moving round to test pit 9, and we were hoping to find maybe something associated with the manor itself. We did find actually some lovely bits of ridge tile and some roof slate, and the nice bit of imported Portuguese redware. In our primary school test pit number 10, we've got some lovely 13th and 14th century medieval pottery, and also a bit of ridge tile as well that's also medieval. So that was a surprise one in test pit 10. Also in the primary school, we found some struck prehistoric flints as well. So this is our earliest find, going all the way back to prehistory. And in test pit 2, up on Brownston Street at Brick House, where we were looking for perhaps indications of something industrial, we've actually found some really lovely medieval pottery. So we've got 13th century, this is a bit of a handle. But actually, I think for me, one of the star finds actually is one of our earliest, or the earliest bit of pottery that we've got from Modbury, possibly ever found to date. And this takes us potentially all the way back to the Doomsday Book.
Oh, wow.
So we're looking at from 1000 to about 1100 AD.
And what on earth is this? This looks like clay pigeon shot.
It is, but what's fascinating that's come from that garden at Palmcross Green is we've got the remains of, or fragments of, a slate roof. And I really like the idea that that might just be the roof of the original house.
Helen and Richard, our priory and our manor house, do you think we managed to get a sense of them?
I think we've definitely, I mean, beyond reasonable doubt, I think, got the priory.
Oh, really?
We haven't actually encountered it physically in the ground, but we know where it must have been. And my eyes are stretching towards test pit 12, which I think is the nearest one. And what did you say that was?
So test pit 12 was actually dug in the graveyard of the church, and they date back to 13th, 14th century.
Wow.
So that's 1200s, 1300s. It's absolutely perfect, isn't it, for the priory? That could be priory rubbish.
We were looking, of course, for the remains of the Champagnan mansion, and it basically has been completely exploded and spread all over the place. So all over the town are fragments of this house. I think they really are definitely from the Champagnan house. It just seems to have been abandoned after damage and then just gradually dissolved. So that garden is particularly rich in fragments of this wonderful great 16th or 17th century house.
And could that have had those slates on the top of it?
It could very well have had those slates on top of it, yes, quite.
And Corenza, pushing the timeline further back, I mean, were there other things that you felt that we should have?
Yeah, well, I was interested in where the medieval settlement had been and what traces we could find of that. And we've certainly got traces of it sort of along where you've got those medieval burgage plots stretching back in the centre of the town. We've got some quite nice bits and pieces around the manor there. But we've also discovered 2 new nodes of medieval settlement. One up at Test 2 and 3 there, where we've got all of that medieval pottery, 12th, 13th, 14th century, from 2 different test pits. And then at school as well. Quite a long way again, another node of settlement. So it's like the settlement has perhaps outlying really intensive farmsteads, quite wealthy. And then, of course, we've also got, pushing it right back, we've got prehistoric flint from those 2 areas in the upper bit of the landscape.
Yeah, so there's a prehistory to this Modbury story as well, is there?
No, I mentioned at the start that we had an idea that there might be a prehistory to this site, and Stuart and I went off into the landscape in very different directions, but actually we came back together right here on the precinct around the church, where both of us believe this was a later prehistoric enclosure, part of a network of enclosures that manage this landscape and manage the trade through this landscape of things like this. This is a tin ingot that was found among 40 in the river mouth. And these would have been traded from Dartmoor down to the coast and over to the continent.
But then something happens at the time of the Civil War that obviously kind of changes things.
I think so, yes. I mean, clearly the medieval plan of the town has survived virtually intact, but there are very, very few medieval buildings left. We managed to identify only about 4 medieval buildings, and even one of those was the church. Everything else seems to have gone, particularly in the upper parts of Church Street. And I suspect that really there was some massive disaster, some terrible trauma, and the buildings seem to be reconstructed in the later 17th and early 18th century. So it's like...
And that's really reflected in the pottery, actually, because when you compare what we've got from the test pits here with pottery from test pits elsewhere in other villages, we're finding virtually no pottery of that sort of 17th century and early 18th century date. I mean, there's a little bit of sort of Delftware type stuff, but very little of it. So it really looks as if the settlement, the reason that those medieval houses were perhaps destroyed during the Civil War, not rebuilt, because people just, there aren't as many people here, and those that aren't here don't seem to have very much spare money to do anything with.
So the population and the economy, it just kind of falls away just immediately after the Civil War. It's just
compared to other places, that's what it looks like, and it fits the bigger picture, don't you?
And then it rebuilds as a Georgian town,
Yep.
and it's the town that we would recognise today. Gosh, what a wonderful way of navigating what appeared at the beginning to be a very complex and confusing history. The community of Modbury has opened up their houses and their gardens to us to try to find out more about the origins of a town that bears the scars of wars and fluctuating fortunes.
Look, these 2. Look-alikes. Come on, John, look at the camera. Look-alikes. Yeah?
We've been able to connect Jim with the history of the Stetson family, who were pillars of the community during the 17th century.
It's been a remarkable experience. It's really hard to put it into words. I've had this bracelet on, so I know I'm shackled to fame for about 3 days, and then when I go home, I'm going to go back to normal.
We now believe that Vincent Stetson left for America after he was hunted down for his royalist sympathies during the civil wars which raged through these streets. The parliamentarians seized control and destroyed the manor of the influential Champenoun family. St. George's Church has stood firm going back to a time before Doomsday, keeping watch over the town through all of its ups and downs. And for centuries it nestled against the Benedictine Priory, and the mound itself reveals a much older tale of an Iron Age hill fort surrounded by an ancient landscape.
Join Time Team on Patreon to access exclusive 3D models, masterclasses, and behind-the-scenes insights.